UCLA is expected to win by 2 to 3 scores against Hawaii. But here's what they need to do to impress with the new Eric Bieniemy offense against the Bows that can make them stand out for the rest of 24.
You are Locked On UCLA, your daily podcast on the UCLA Bruins. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome, everybody, to this edition of the Locked On UCLA podcast. I'm your host, Zach Anderson-Yoxsimer. Thanks for making this show your first listen each and every day. It's free wherever you get your podcast, and it's available on YouTube. Like, comment, subscribe. Thanks for your support. This episode is brought to you by Gametime. Download the app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Download the app today. What time is it? It's game time. And where we're starting today is what UCLA needs to do to impress against Hawaii. A Hawaii team that was dominated by the Bruins 3 years ago in 21 in the Rose Bowl. First trip for the Bruins, I think, since the late 30s to Hawaii. And a series that's been all-time won by UCLA. A Hawaii team that against Delaware State was favored by 40-plus points against an FCS team. Only beat them by 3 scores, tied late. Yes, some swirling wins. So how can the Bruins impress in a game where we're not going to learn a lot about UCLA? Well, we can learn a lot about the line. Hawaii was able to generate some pressure against Delaware State. Well, that's expected for a Rainbow Warrior team that's bigger, better, faster than what Delaware State is, right? That's just the facts in this day and age. Regardless of what Hawaii has to do to travel, being a Mountain West school, they can overwhelm Delaware State physically. But some of the things UCLA can utilize is, how does this offensive line look? If they struggle against Hawaii, then some of what Locked On College Football's predictions from Spencer McLaughlin will be true. He says they're going to be a 1-win, 2-win team. Spencer does. Yeah, go to his channel. Watch it. The most recent segment of his August 28th episode, the same episode date that we're dropping this episode, his last segment was dedicated to how UCLA is not that good. It's going to be a sucky year, and they could very well be a 2-0 team that ends 2-10, 1-11 potentially if they don't win the Indiana game. But how will we find that out? We won't in game 1 against Hawaii. We won't. But the most important thing in this new offense, this new era, with a quarterback that's overlooked, with a lot of pieces or in the receiver room, in the running back room, is how well the offensive line plays. What Hawaii did against Delaware State, they didn't force any turnovers. They did force a fumble, but they didn't recover it. In large in part, the standout was Jemai Otis on a defensive line. He had 2.5 tackles for loss, had a sack, and this is a Hawaii team that had overall 5 sacks against Delaware State, all right? They returned a special teams touchdown, but what we're focusing on is a Hawaii team that was able to generate pressure, get to the backfield, tackles for loss, as a team that large in part was able to have some dominant moments, but they missed quite a few tackles. I didn't get the overall number, but Hawaii had 5 sacks for 21 yards lost, and Delaware State was 5 of 18 on third down, even though Hawaii allowed 2 scores in 2 red zone trips for Delaware State. Okay, Hawaii's football team was on the field for a lot of the time. Delaware State had the football 33 minutes in that game. So what does UCLA have to do? The biggest question mark offensively is not the ability of Ethan Garbers. We large in part know what he can bring. A spark plug to a UCLA team, some veteran leadership that has pieces around him that if Eric Bieniemy game plans with his shifting formations as a multi-Super Bowl champion with the Kansas City Chiefs, he can just dial up a play where Garbers doesn't need to be the hero. But the story, what is out of the LA Times with the reporting, Garbers took out his big boys, his offensive line, to dinner, paid the tab. Would have looked a little more suspect in the pre-NIL days, but that's what he did. Can UCLA handle the pressure? Because Hawaii got in the backfield, watching the game, watching those highlights, right? They got in the backfield, which was expected. But if they're doing that against UCLA, it's important. And another thing, not that I'm going to pin this on TJ Harden, this is more on all the UCLA players. Hawaii missed quite a few tackles. How many Bows, how many Rainbow Warriors is it going to take down a UCLA Bruin? Is it the first to contact, or is it yards after contact? I'd like to see this UCLA team against Hawaii. One, when it comes to contact, they better not be anywhere near Ethan Garbers in this game. The Bows should not, or we should be worried, or Hawaii's got a sneaky good defensive attack this year on a team that does return quite a few players from their 23 team as they look to make a bowl game when they need 7 wins this year. Now, yards after contact is important for Harden, for Jones, large in part for Harden, the more physical tailback of the two on the depth chart for UCLA. And these receivers, I'm not sure Bieniemy is going to exactly open up the playbook in week 1 with lots of daunting defenses or big-time environments to play later this year at LSU, at Penn State, at Nebraska. We know the list. We know the teams coming to UCLA. We know they're not going to completely open up the playbook if they don't have to. It's how much can these players out-muscle, out-hustle, and have a lot better agility to get out of these tackles, right? Because Hawaii was very sloppy. There's multiple times they had the Delaware State quarterback wrapped up in the backfield, it looked like. And it took 5 players, which you want everybody rallying to the football. You want them all rallying to get there. But he was able to be slippery, get 7-8 yards, escape the tackle for loss, and get positive gains. And the dual threat ability, potentially of Ethan Garbers. He's not a dual threat quarterback, but a slip here or there, if wide open, I'd expect him and want him maybe to take it. Not take some big hits, but if he has some chances, he can escape pressure and showcase, hey, he's not going to go down on the first contact, or the running back for that matter. And what UCLA needs to do to really get us fired up about this game, truly, to get us excited about this team in 2024, they have to put up more than 42 points, 42 or more, for us to feel excited about the offense. Like, oh, they came to play and they dominated. Like, I want Justin Martin or somebody deep down, maybe 2 or 3 UCLA quarterbacks to get in this game. 3 or 4 or 5 running backs get in this game. Burn one of those 4 games potentially for those guys to utilize in a redshirt season. We want guys to get in the game, and that might be their first game or 2, or only they play all year in this Hawaii trip for this UCLA team, okay? Get the freshmen, get them their feet wet, get David Shaw's kid in there, right? Carter Shaw, get him some opportunities. Number 2 in his spot, right? UCLA is so deep in the receiver room that their second on the depth chart at every spot is equally as good, with Logan Loy not even number 1 behind Rico Flores Jr., the Notre Dame transfer, okay? I want to see Justin Martin. I want to see maybe a Chase Griffin if they go down the line, right? Because they do have a lot of freshman quarterbacks behind Martin who ended up winning the backup job. I want to see all the offensive linemen get as many reps as possible to prepare themselves for what lies ahead. Now, if they struggle, that's cause for concern. A lot of cause for concern. A lot. Okay, yes, there was a lot of weather in that Hawaii-Delaware State game. There's weather patterns throughout the Clarence T.C. Ching complex, the small complex that's basically a bona fide home football stadium on campus for the Bows right now. Close to 30-mile-per-hour gusts. I'm not sure that's what UCLA is going to deal with, but we do need to see the ball distributed. I'd like to see at least 5 to 6, 7 different receivers touch the ball, get their hands in a game on a football, make a catch, make a big play, yards after contact. If anybody gets near Garbers consistently, that was the worry last year when they played Coastal Carolina, that they got to Moore in his face. They got to Garbers. He got hit throwing a pick, and that's why we all thought Garbers was terrible, because he made a decision which led to 1 or 2 of his interceptions and eventually led to him getting benched for week 2, where Dante Moore was the starter for the majority of Pac-12 play. You can help your quarterback look good if you don't got guys rushing him up the middle, getting into the backfield with ease for a team like Hawaii, or last year was Coastal Carolina. And that's where the Bruins struggled protecting the quarterback with pressure, extended pressure, blitz, short down yardage situations. If they can't handle those things against Hawaii, then yes, those 4 wins this season might be a real thing. I hesitate to say that right now. I want to tell everybody that Spencer is wrong, but that is where UCLA must have against Hawaii. Protection of their quarterback, clear protection of their quarterback. And to get excited about the offense, I want 42 or more points. All right, 42 or more points to get excited. And we need to get excited about UCLA men's basketball because bracketology, early season bracketology is coming out. You've got top 20s from John Rothstein with his preseason top 45. Where does UCLA slot? Why is it so hit or miss where they're supposed to be? Okay, we'll talk about that and I think why they're wrong next on Locked On UCLA. All right, let's talk to you about Game Time because you're going to need tickets to go to all these games, whether it's college football, concert theater. It's the fun time of the year where a lot of events are happening once summer's ending, all right? Namely, Major League Baseball, postseason. You're going to want to check out Game Time Picks. Makes getting tickets for your favorite live events even easier. It filters out the fluff to get you only incredible deals on great seats so you don't have to waste your time searching through thousands of tickets, let alone all the apps you got to go check out, right? So with Game Time, you can toggle a feature that shows you the whole price up front with no surprise fees at checkout. That's all in pricing. You toggle the feature in the app and it shows you all the prices. You don't need to worry about the fees at the end. And there's a lowest price guarantee, same row, same area, or Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Create an account. Use the code LOCKEDONCollege, LOCKEDONCOLLEGE, LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? It's Game Time. You've heard us talk a lot about FanDuel. Well, it's America's #1 sports book because now we have a little something different for you. From now until September 22nd, all FanDuel customers bet $5 and you can get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Then with a YouTube TV base plan, you'll be able to watch every regular season Sunday afternoon out-of-market game. And all you need is a Google account and a current form of payment, and you can cancel any time. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to download America's #1 sportsbook. All right, so what are these Bruins supposed to be this year under Mick Cronin? Are they a top 10 team like I'm proclaiming and announcing them going to an Elite Eight, Final Four, national championship contender? I see the post. They're not going to lose a game with all the talent they have. They have too much talent that last year's starters might not even see any playing time. The freshmen, good. They're going to grind out minutes. They're going to carve out minutes that take away from the transfers and the returners' times. And they've got returners who are supposed to be extremely big-time pieces of this team, namely Dylan Andrews, who, if you look at some of the projected lineups from various sources, including myself, might be the only returner in the starting lineup, and he's going to get the ball on the rock every single time down the floor. A UCLA team who now officially released their non-conference schedule just the other day or so, right? They're going to start with Ryder. They got New Mexico. They're going to play Arizona. I might have said they're playing Arizona and Phoenix. Now that's down the line. You got to think all these different neutral site venues and everything. It's nuts, and it just boggles the brain a little bit. But namely, they're not playing anybody in true home and road games. A lot of neutral site games, although Arizona, right, generally going to be closer to home, or UCLA Gonzaga will be closer to home. They get the North Carolina game, then the Gonzaga game. 3 of their 4 games from mid-December prior to the end of the 2024 calendar year. Arizona, North Carolina, Gonzaga. All right, that is 3 of your 4 games to end the calendar year. So we're going to learn a lot about this team that is currently in Bracketology by Joe Lunardi, you know, the man, the maestro. Preseason Bracketology last year wasn't so high on the Bruins. Preseason rankings weren't high on the Bruins, flirted with top 25 just outside. And with last year, everybody had the question marks about a team that had so many new pieces, large in part freshmen. The big statement, I think it was Jeff Goodman said, all right, they're not going to make the top. They're not going to make the tournament. That was his bold prediction, which I vastly disagreed with, and I was a little wrong because we hoped they'd be good. And with some, paperwork issues, injury issues, UCLA was inconsistent and, quite frankly, not good enough to compete in last year's Pac-12, let alone make an NCAA tournament or make a bid through the Pac-12 tournament. This year, the roster is filled with talent, okay? Every single spot you look at, it's a double-digit scorer or an elite defender, or in some cases, both. From Dylan Andrews to Sky Clark, the scorer, as the shooting guard, to Kobe Johnson, DeBillito as the 4, to Kyle as the 5. So I look at what Joe Lunardi has, right? Joe Lunardi has this UCLA team as a 6th seed in the East. So if you do your math, that's 4 different regions: the West, the East, the Midwest, and the South. And if UCLA is the 6th seed in the West, which is this year's San Francisco Regional in the Sweet 16 Elite 8 round, that would mean UCLA is probably amongst the 21st to 24th best teams in the country. Now it's a little crazier because when you had to balance the seeding, you're not supposed to play teams you've seen in the regular season, like in the conference. so close. So it's a bit of a fluctuating model that's going to be weird with two super conferences like the Big 10, the Big 12. Of course, the Big East wants something to say about that. So does the ACC. UCLA is currently in a conference that is projected to get 10 bids alongside the SEC, and UCLA is a 6 seed. Now, here's my thought. I've been trying to understand what the model and the projection are, and according to, I've looked at it a couple of times. Now, you can lose sight of which teams are supposed to be good, especially what conference they're supposed to be in. The highest seed I've seen in the Big Ten is Purdue as a 4. Purdue as a 4 seed, then Indiana as a 5, UCLA as a 6. Those are your top 3 to 4 teams possibly in the Big Ten Conference. Purdue's losing Edey. Indiana, they're losing a couple pieces too, but bringing in quite a bit. And now the Bruins, possibly as a first, second, third best team in the Big Ten, aren't getting anywhere better than what is supposed to be a top 24 spot. Whereas you look at Purdue, you put them in a 4-4 team model, they're a top 12, top 16 team. So I wonder how much of these projections are based on pure talent and skill alone versus what we expect UCLA to do. Is it just a war of attrition in this regular season, right? Is it just going to be so tough when you play North Carolina, Arizona, Gonzaga, right? New Mexico on a neutral site. You hope they win all the cupcakes versus the mid-majors at home. They should. They better this year with this talent. They better not be losing to CSUN at home. And then you got the gauntlet of the home and road splits with the Big Ten, where the easiest games this year might be the home and road games against the former Pac-12, Pac-10 turned Big Ten rivals in Oregon and Washington and USC, where you get 2. And USC is going to have something to say with Eric Musselman in charge, because he always has a late season charge in him, a late season surge. Now look at John Rothstein's preseason top 45, and he's got UCLA 16 with a projected starting 5 of Andrews, Clark, Johnson, Bilodeau, Kyle, close to mine. Earlier I said it was Sebastian Mack as the 2. I've kind of gone back and forth and wavered. All right, Clark's going to have something to say, and Dominic Harris is going to battle. Trent Perry might have something to say. There's so many guys battling for the starting 2 spot, backup minutes at the 1. And with Daly Jr. and Bilodeau, there's going to be so many shuffling between the 2, 4, and the 5 spots as to who might get in and might get minutes. The talent is there for this team to score, to play defense, to be elite rebounders. Somebody goes down, they got a guy to back them up who can score 10, 15 a game and shoot the 3 at almost every spot. A little undersized, yes, other than a Daimara. Dan Williams isn't, as Mick Cronin said, strong enough, physical enough to handle and maintain life in the Big Ten just yet, but still that's a big body. UCLA, large in part, in terms of elite players that will play and start, are a little undersized until you get to Mara off the bench. Okay, so where does this leave this team? Vulnerable potentially in the post. Cronin worrying about the 5, although he's got an elite defender and finisher at the rim, although little undersized in William Kyle. But versatile players up and down where they might be able to run out of the gym. Normally UCLA is used to being slow it down. Let's play ISO through Jaquez. Let's give the ball to Juzang. Let's let Dylan Andrews go and cut to the hole, right? Or see Sebastian Mack just drive and get fouled or throw it up wildly as we saw last year. And wait on Stefanovic maybe to get hot from 3. This year they can run and gun a little bit. Run and shoot, dare I say, like the Hawaii offense the Bruins are going to see in the gridiron, on the gridiron coming up. UCLA can go quick this year. They can go a little slow. And they're currently slotted behind Indiana, who's supposed to be a full seed line ahead of UCLA. Arizona, former Pac-12 turned Big 12 non-conference rival. Auburn, Purdue. So if it holds true, UCLA can make a lot of statements between the 3 teams in their non-conference schedule right ahead of them. Gonzaga, preseason 8. You've got then Arizona, preseason 14. North Carolina with R.J. Davis returning, preseason 7. So you've got 2 top 10 teams away from home, although some people might call the Intuit Dome a home game, in addition to Purdue, a tough conference game, with an Arizona game and an Indiana game. Those are 4 to 5 teams right ahead of UCLA in the schedule that the Bruins are going to have to play and be challenged immediately in this schedule, all away mostly from Pauley Pavilion and from the UCLA campus. And I think they can handle some of these challenges and get wins. which makes me wonder, we haven't had that super team lately in college basketball. I'm not sure that we'll have that looking at whatever roster some teams are bringing back. I know quite a few pieces are coming back for Houston, like LJ Cryer, and you're wondering who's staying as well. Then you've got Kansas, who's still got Dickinson. Alabama's excited with Mark Sears. Yet, I think UCLA has a lot of talent they've replaced, a lot of youngsters, and replaced them with talent. I'm not sure that they're ready to be written off as a top 25 team because of what the crazy Big Ten schedule is. Yes, they might lose 7 to 8 games, but last year UConn still took their few losses in the regular season before kicking butt in the postseason. Kicking butt. Now, UCLA's not UConn the last 2 seasons. I don't think they'll win many games by double digits in the postseason just yet. A new unit learning themselves under the Mick Cronin system. But they'll be ready defensively. Anybody practically in the roster can score. A lot of athleticism up and down. And other than maybe the projections pointing to how tough the schedule will be, it's just not an idea of think where UCLA is talent-wise. I think they're one of the top 10 teams in the country talent-wise. It's just after you play all those games, they might get slotted lower, but be battle-tested for March and April, which is where I hope and think UCLA should be, and that's why I think some people are keeping them much lower than they should be in this preseason counter, which just gives us stuff to talk about. Okay, and speaking about stuff to talk about, we're going to go to track and field and some cross-country because there are some recruiting violations, and then I have a bone to pick, right? A brief little rant I'm going to give you guys, and it's all because of the Big Ten. We'll talk about it. Nothing major, nothing ridiculous, but the recruiting violations are something to note as well. Next on Locked On UCLA. All right, it's the big time to watch all your college football games, right? It's the big Labor Day weekend. We're all excited. But how do you stay awake to watch every game from morning to night, right? It's not like they got the game in Dublin, but College Game Day is early in the morning, and all the other shows as well. You're going to want to grab a 5-hour energy to stay alert for all your favorite games because the Bruins, they don't play till 4:30 Pacific. You're going to want to be able to watch early games, mid-afternoon games, UCLA games, and the late-night games. So take a 5-hour energy shot to watch and stay up the intense overtime West Coast game and do that in the morning, the 5-hour energy shots to stay up for all those games. Because on the site, you can build between 12 packs, 24 packs with flavors like watermelon, tropical burst, grape, and there's more flavors for everybody. Try them all because it's the perfect pick-me-up for getting stuff done with zero sugar, and it's convenient and portable. So if you're watching on your phone away from home, it can come with you, 5-hour energy. All you got to do is go to 5hourenergy.com. That is the number 5, hourenergy.com, and get some 5-hour energy product today. You can use my promo code LOCKEDONCFB for 20% off your order. The offer is only valid until September 30th on one order and cannot be used with other promotions. Code is not good on subscription orders. Go to 5hourenergy.com today. All right, so let's get started with this third segment. It's not the good things talking about stuff in Bruin land and Westwood and UCLA. Let me tell you about a little rant before I get to the violations. I was looking up because I've done some college soccer broadcasting this year on the women's side. They have rankings. And my little rant to start with you guys. UCLA has vaulted up on the women's soccer side to number 3 in the country. That's not my gripe. But large in part, some of these other sports, they come out, like with soccer, and they give them regional rankings. Like, oh, who's the best in the West? That's how they combine and make sure it's not just all SEC teams, although large in part, they'd still throw in a lot of teams from these varying conferences, the power conferences, if you will. They do like to recognize who are the best teams in the West, in the East, in the North, in the South, in the Midwest. And what's funny is I looked at what's the West regional ranking for UCLA's women's soccer team. Just as a fun thing, all right, I saw they vaulted up the standings to number 3 after being a preseason 11. UCLA actually is not listed in the West rankings. Okay, I noticed they have a Pacific ranking. A lot of those schools in the Pacific ranking are teams in the Mountain Time Zone or mountain schools like Colorado and such, okay? And now there's probably deeper reasonings to this, but I would think based on the titles, UCLA should be in the Pacific ranking. They should be in the West ranking. So naturally, I go to the Midwest ranking. Where's the Big Ten? Large in part in the Midwest ranking. Nowhere to be found for the Midwest regional ranking Pacific ranking or the West ranking. So then you go to the North, all right? They're in the North ranking. And what is UCLA? What is Southern California? It's not north of anything Los Angeles than San Diego, all right? And, there's some schools in the South, a little further south than Los Angeles. If you go based across a line straight across the United States, LA is pretty far south. Call it the South, but it's pretty far south, Southern California. But for them to be in the North, because of being in the Big Ten, just seems a little ridiculous. Considering all the teams they played right now have been on the West Coast, right? Between the Long Beach State and then BYU, they're going to play Santa Clara. It's kind of ridiculous. Cal Poly, all West teams. So naturally, where they're ranked to start the year is a Northern team. Make it make sense. It doesn't. Okay. What we're here to talk about, though, to wrap up the show, is just some news for UCLA fans. This was posted on the NCAA website about infractions, recruiting violations in women's cross country and their track and field programs, posted on August 28th. Okay. It's the Committee on Infraction splits case, the formal decision to be released later, according to the press release by the NCAA, which, is the extreme voice of reason when it comes to any infractions, any sport, every school. It's totally justified the same. Okay, sarcasm noted. UCLA has, this is what the press release says, reached an agreement with the NCAA enforcement staff on recruiting violations that occurred within the women's cross country and track and field programs, and the NCAA panel has approved the agreement. The former assistant cross country and track and field coach has disputed the violations in the agreement and resolved his portion of the case through a separate hearing. The violations apparently came over several months, including impermissible communications, primarily with parents of student athletes at other schools who are not in the NCAA transfer portal. So it shows you when you got Miami of Ohio complaining about the Alabama trying to take their kicker and they go back and forth, all these coaches, varying sports, parents trying to circumnavigate the system so their kid doesn't have to go in the portal and tick off their coach, and they can make it like, oh yeah, we'll go there. Be some certified agent. That's the weirdness that we're dealing with all the way down to cross country and track and field. Hey, where are we going? You want to come to UCLA? Hey, my kid's going to go to UCLA. Parents are becoming certified agents. Don't do that for your kids if your kid is a student athlete or trying to be an amateur pro like college athletic individual, which is probably the more appropriate term instead of student athlete nowadays. And then what the committee did say is, yes, the school fully cooperated with the investigation, worked collaboratively with the NCAA to bring the matter to a timely resolution, but the committee will not discuss further details in the case, and the potential violations and penalties for the former assistant coach is still pending. The agreed upon penalties in this case is 1 year of probation, $5,000 fine, and recruiting restrictions, all in alignment with the agreed upon level 2 mitigated classification for UCLA. Team records will be vacated from all regular season and postseason competitions in which the involved athletes were ineligible. So you vacate those from the records, level 2 violations, $5,000 fines, which sounds small, but in sports that don't have a lot of big budget material, and you're trying to allocate that towards $5,000 for them to use a bus and make it easier for them to travel for a meet, all right? Mind you, you look at the sports that are making money, usually the cross-country programs and the track and fields, you can take a bus and it's okay, but you don't want to lose $5,000 based on recruiting. And yes, they're making millions of dollars on the big media deal with the Big Ten. But that's how you want to allocate the $5,000 to pay a fine with recruiting violations because parents are talking to a coach prior to them being in the portal who disputes the whole thing. And this could all be negated necessarily if the coach disagrees and there's different. But it's a separate hearing. So the school has been in compliance with the NCAA. They're basically like, we don't want to deal with this. Let's get out of it. We're done, right? But the records being vacated, dumb. A fine, recruiting restrictions, level 2. And remember, Iowa literally has a self-imposed suspension of Kirk Ferentz, Big Ten member, Big Ten rival, who the Bruins will see later this year, who had a big public apology about his potential probable level 2 violation of talking to a person a day or two before the portal is open. So anywhere from football all the way down to any other sports, across the NCAA, the collegiate national scale, we deal with these. It's unfortunate that we see this. It was news, and I figured why not talk about it. But the biggest thing, it seems like just waiting, or parents or people acting like agents for these athletes, trying to make sure they have a home before they go in the portal. Because if you look at the numbers, I don't have official numbers in front of me right now. Nowhere is this accurate. I'm not going to throw out a number. But the amount of athletes in the portal does not equal 100% to those portal athletes who find homes. People who leave don't always get to go back, and they don't always get to go somewhere. The amount of athletes that go in the portal and have successful portal entries in terms of successful seasons after, not 100%. People who enter the portal to try and find new homes in every sport, not 100%. All right, not everybody's making the big jump upwards like Paul Skeens from Air Force to LSU. Okay, if you read that article earlier today. Or everybody going from somewhere to UCLA or from UCLA to somewhere else. It's not how it operates. So it's just interesting to see how it all plays out. It's unfortunate to see the UCLA name like this, but it happens, and that's why you cooperate. And if it's wrong, well, the NCAA has been wrong before, as they're totally justified with how they handled the Michigan situation or other situations, every situation, other than how USC cheated back in the day. All right, that's going to wrap it up. Let's get your hands up, UCLA fans. Get an 8 clap going. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. UCLA fight, fight, fight. This has been Locked On UCLA. We're going to talk more defense against Hawaii, more basketball, recruits, everything here on Locked On UCLA. Download, like, comment, review, subscribe. Thanks for your support. This is Zach signing off. Go Bruins.